If you've watched some of our other videos, you might already know, but my wife and I bought our little humble home last year, and ever since it's been a big project. Our little house has a very limited amount of storage, so it's important we make the most of it. Our walk-in robe is what I'd refer to as compact. There's very little space to work with, so it required a bit of a creative approach to make the most of it without breaking the bank. We installed one of these IKEA PAX flat pack wardrobes in the corner and these wall-to-wall rails for hanging space. It's made this limited space much more practical, and I think gets about as much usable storage out of it as we can. In order to get this cabinet installed while minimizing the wasted area, we had to notch out the cornicing to snug it up close to the wall. Obviously, this left us with an unsightly gap at the top of the cabinet, which also allows air in and out of the roof space, which couldn't stand, obviously. Now, building in cheap IKEA cabinets to save a buck is not a new idea. One YouTube search will reveal this is a very popular DIY hack project. To properly build this cabinet in will involve installing some new cornicing that fits around the cabinet and ties nicely into the existing stuff. But installing cornice looks a lot like plastering, which I'm not very good at, and I have zero interest in getting better. I hate plastering. So instead of plastering, I'm going to 3D print cornice that will fit my install perfectly and save me having to plaster anything at all. Like my downpipe video from a couple months back, I'm doing this because I believe the best tool for the job really is often just the one you're best at using. Is this the cheapest method of cornicing? No. Is it the fastest? No, but it's still cheaper and faster than hiring a plasterer for this tiny job, and I get a fun little weekend project out of it. As always, step one is to pull out my trusty steel rule, tape measure and pencil and sketch the cabinet as it sits in the room now. Before we jump into Fusion though, let's quickly talk about something a little less fun than filling cornice gaps with 3D printed plastic: data gaps. Or, more specifically, the giant gaps in our privacy caused by data brokers. If you've noticed an increase in spam calls, sketchy emails, or those creepily specific ads, you're not imagining things. Data brokers collect and sell your personal info, things like your name, address, phone number, and even where you work, and they're not picky about who buys it. That's where this video's sponsor, Incogni, comes in. Incogni automatically contacts over 230 data brokers to get your information removed from their database. No forms, no email chains, just set it up and let them handle it. Now, full transparency, Incogni's service is not yet available in Australia, so I couldn't use it myself, but I did my research and jumped on a call with a friend from the US to get it set up for him. And seeing those data removal confirmations roll in looks incredibly satisfying. It's a little wild how far your details can spread without you knowing about it. Incogni even shows you the progress of getting your data removed from all of these databases right there in your profile, which has been horrifyingly interesting to watch. So if you're in a supported country and want to take a step towards better privacy, protecting yourself from robocalls, ID theft, or just stopping ads for things you barely thought about, check out Incogni. Head to incogni.com/thestockpot and use my code TheStockpot to get 60% off an annual plan. Big thanks to Incogni for supporting the channel and helping make privacy a little easier. Once I had my sketch, I jumped into Fusion and got to work. I modeled up the top of the cabinet, ceiling and walls to build my new cornice around. Fusion 360 is a parametric CAD platform, which means as long as all your dimensions are defined, everything downstream will be affected by changes that precede them. In the case of this project, that means that, for example, if I got one of these measurements slightly wrong, I can go back in the timeline, edit the dimensions I put in at the very beginning, and everything down the line will be automatically adjusted to that new number to make it fit. It's less relevant for one-off projects like this one, but it can save you a lot of headaches if you like to iterate as you go. And it's good best practice to keep it in mind when you're designing. I put a little lip on the back of the cornice profile so it would fit nice and neatly between the cabinet and the ceiling. I also notched out some sections to allow for the sides of the cabinet, being proud of the top and the shelves. I was able to find the profile of our cornicing by looking around on some supplier websites, which I thought would save me having to use the other CAD, cardboard aided design, to find the profile. It turns out this particular kind of cornicing is kind of just stuck into the corner between the wall and ceiling with no real consistency. This means that the profile isn't consistent across the wall as it twists and is different on opposite ends of the same piece in places. I'd always assumed there was a square surface on the back of the lengths to assist in a consistent installation, but apparently not on this bulk builder special profile. I modeled something pretty close based on the manufacturer's drawings and then used the cut tool to cut that profile from my cornice to create the joint between the two. Then I printed just that section to check the fit against the actual cornice. A small gap is fine, we'll be caulking the joint before painting, but I wanted to minimize it as much as possible. This took me 4 or 5 tries, but that was made super easy by my new Prusa Core 1. Prusa saw some of my videos and reached out about whether I'd like to try one of their new Core 1s. This is their new-ish Core XY printer, and it's the most solid printer I think I've ever owned, and I've been through quite a few now. It's been fast, consistent, and reliable for the last few weeks. It feels much more like a tool than my bamboo printers, which I think is really positive. I've been putting it through its paces on this project and a couple of others I've got coming, so I'll let you know how it performs longer term. But for now, it's performing fantastically. The print queuing function in Prusa Connect has also been a godsend. It saves me so much time, and with some really big projects on the way, I'm very excited to not have to maintain a spreadsheet of what prints next to keep myself organized. Thanks a bunch to Prusa for sending this out. It's definitely going to get a workout. I ran off a few test prints of the front joint with the existing cornice and a few tests of the rear joint. I'd gotten a bit keen when trimming the corners back there, so I filled the gap with the print. Printing small parts like this and sneaking up on the correct profile is a great way to get the fit just right while minimizing wasted filament. Once I figured out a close enough profile for the front corner, the one you can actually see, I split the cornice length into pieces that would fit on the Core 1. Once it was split into pieces, I added some little dog bone joiners that we can use to put them back together again when we're ready to install. Because they're being printed on one end, I needed to make the top of the dog bone holes come to a point so they would print neatly. I dry fitted all the parts for the front edge to check the fit was right and dimensions were all correct. It was a nice tight fit, and whatever gaps were left could be filled with some caulking really easily. Then I glued that section together permanently using a couple of those dog bones and some super glue. Then I printed all the parts for the short side of the cabinet and test fitted those too. It looks like I must have mismeasured something because the center section was about 6mm too long. So I remeasured and reprinted just that section, test fitted it, and then permanently glued them together ready to install. I opted to use matte white PLA filament for this. It's quite close to the color of our ceiling paint, so I should be able to get away with less coats to match the color. I printed with a 0.2mm layer height, which with this matte filament is barely perceptible at a distance and should save me having to do any real sanding. I used some polyurethane glue to fix the parts into place and waited for it to dry before adding some acrylic gap filling caulking to all the edges and into a couple of minor gaps between corner sections. After a couple of hours, it was dry enough to paint, so I slapped on a coat of primer and then a couple coats of ceiling paint, blending it into the existing ceiling. Fortunately, ceiling paint is very forgiving. Once the paint was dry, we could finally move all our clothes off the dining table and back into the wardrobe, and here we are. I think the final result looks great. It's easily better than I could have managed the traditional way, and if I exclude printing time, I'm confident it took me significantly less time than the traditional method would have taken me as well. Yeah, it probably costs more in filament than a length of cornice and some mud, but I don't have a length of cornice and mud. I do have a bunch of filament though. There's probably some kind of hybrid alternative where long straight lengths are traditional cornicing and corners and tricky joints are made from 3D prints, but blending the joints would probably be even more difficult. Who knows? So, what are your thoughts? Do you see any disadvantages over the traditional method? Would you give it a shot? If you liked this video, please hit like to tell the algorithm it was enjoyable. If not, let me know why. I'd love to hear your feedback. If you like this kind of project, hit subscribe for some more down the line, and maybe go back and watch that one time I made a 3D printed downpipe, or downspout, which Americans seem to insist on calling it. Anyway, Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.